Hi and welcome to this new Smode tutorial, and here we will see how to emit particles from a video, an image or whatever. And this will involve to use many different elements. So let's start by creating a new composition with a camera and a material bank. And this will require to create a plane, emit particles from this plane, and use texture on this plane to display an image. So let's start by creating a plane. Here it is. So this camera is perspective camera. I will use a preset which is the top perspective camera here, and so this will put my camera right in top of my plane. And let's lock this camera so we're sure that nothing will move afterwards. So what kind of image will we use? Let's start with a checkerboard and put that into a composition that I will call source images, for instance. This is a composition that is in HD resolution. So let's right click on it and share this element. So that's here. This is the shared element that I will use in many different parts of my composition to create this effect. So first I will use this video, this image as material, as texture of my plane. To do that I will create a new surface renderer in my material bank, and let's call that video, for instance. And inside this video renderer, which I will put on my plane, I will take my source image, which is this one. With Alt, drag and drop, I will put that into my video material. So now I have my plane, which is textured by my video renderer, and inside my video renderer I have as a diffuse image this shared element which is called source image. Now let's move on, and let's first put my plane on the good ratio. As a reminder, I use a HD resolution video, so let's put 19.20 by 10.8 up, and then we have the good ratio. Let's relink it and reduce that so it fits to my window. So it fits, I use a Control Shift click, and then I can shift the value by a small amount, and that seems pretty alright. So let's switch in 3D mode. So now we have this plane with my camera right in top of it. Now what I want to do is to emit particle from this image. So how will I do that? I will, over my plane here, create a operator. So right click, operator, and emit particles. And so as you see, I emit particle from my whole plane. So once I do that, to emit particle from my plane, I have now two different renderers on my plane. So if I click on my plane, I can see here that my renderer type is a group 3D renderer, which means that I have several different renderers. The first one is my video renderer, which is the one that I defined before, which allow me to display my texture on my plane, and the other one is the default point that is currently displaying my particles. So let's double click here so we have more to see. Alright, so this default point I will rename it particles. Okay, so we know what's what, and let's get rid of this default surface renderer so it's clearer. So first thing first, I want to emit particles only using my video input. So what I will use is actually the black and white value, so the luminosity intensity of my source images. Let's recall that source video. for now it's just a checkerboard, but believe me, later on we will put some videos inside of this. And so to emit just from the white, the most brightest part of this image, what I will do is use a mask over my emit particles. But to see better what we do, let's augment the emit rate of my particle from 100 to 10,000. And let's reduce a little bit the size of my emitted particles, or else it will become too slow for Smode to compute. So how will I do to emit particles only from the white part of my source video layer? Well, it's simple. I will just create a mask over my emit particle modifier. So right click, mask, layer mask, and inside this layer mask I will replace the generator uniform by my source video using Alt drag and drop. So now let's re-emit particle and see if that works. It seems so. So now I emit particles only from the white part of my video. Another way to do so, to create this mask, is just to drag and drop the source video image and use a control drag and drop over the emit particles, and this will result in creating a layer mask with directly the good layer, which is this one, inside my layer mask. So let's augment a little bit the size of the checkerboard like that, and so we'll see better what's going on. So let's re-emit particles. Alright, there's some particles emitted from this part. I don't know why is that. Well, maybe a little bug, but that will be fine for my current example. So now the second things I need to do is to be sure that my particles are colored using the colors of my object. So to do that, let's use a different kind of source image inside my source video. And to do that, what I will do is currently go into my devices here and create and I will use my webcam as a source video. So let's go to edit devices, video input, and let's add my shitty webcam. Alright, so I see that I have my video input that work well here, and let's do a right click here, 2D layers, video input, and this will result into my source video to put this beautiful face here. And let's do a right click over my video input, placement full, and now this is the source image. I will use both to texture my plane and to emit my particle. So let's re-emit particle, and I will emit particle with the lifespan of 2 seconds, and this time we will emit like, let's add a little 0 so to see what's happening. So now I see that I'm clearly emitting more particle from the white part of my video and less particle from the black part of my video. So this allows me to, well, emit particles, but it's not quite beautiful. So because what I would like to do now is to emit particles which inherit of the colors of my video input layer. But first let's use some kind, where is it? Let's use some kind of real-time lighting. Alright, real-time lighting. And emit particle again. So now what we are going to do with my real-time lighting is to emit particles that actually take the color of my video input. How do I do that? I will create an attribute, Colorize layer, and inside this Colorize layer I will use my source video with Alt drag and drop again. And as you see, the result is not quite beautiful because actually I need to put my Colorize layer before my emit particles. And now you see that my emitted particles are colorized with the color of my video. Now if I deactivate the particle renderer, you see that this Colorize layer is actually doing a shitty work on the video itself, because what I want to do is for the Colorize layer to apply to have an effect only on my particles, so only on my point renderer, which is this one. So what I will do is put my Colorize layer and my Emit Particle only on my particle renderers. Alright, so now what I want to do for the things to be less messy, it's to emit particles not from this wall surface, but to restrict my particle emission from, let's say, the outbound, the contrasted part of my video, my source image. And to do that, I will use a mask here. And let's go back in 2D mode. And this is actually the video I use to emit particles. So I emit more particle from the brightest part and less particle from the darkest part. So let's put over this mask a right click, stylize, which will be a subble. And this subble, I will put it in white. And let's do a Ctrl-Shift-C over this mask. Alright, and let's revisualize. And let's get rid of the alpha layer so we see better what's going on. So now I will emit particles only from, well, what is defined into my mask, which is the white part here. Let's see if that worked. And yeah, it worked. So now I'm emitting particle only from that part. And now I will use a last effect. And before I do that, let's reduce a little bit the lifespan of my particles. And now what I will do is use the last effect, which is a field, intensity layer field that I will put on my emit particle. Sorry, I'm a little bit slow, but it's quite late. So let's use the normal map layer field. Alright, and you see that something is happening. My particles are emitted in some random direction. So first thing first, when I use this normal map layer field, it's to adapt it. And so the normal map layer field here is using a mapper, which by default is by 1 meter by 1 meter, which you can see here. The problem is that my plane right now has a size of 4.04906 by this amount. So what I will do is do a right click over the size, copy 2D size in positive meter, and let's go back into my normal map layer field and paste this value into my mapping size, paste 2D size in positive meter. And now I shall have normal map layer field, which will be defined in the in my wall plane. Now what I want to do is to use, instead of this gradient, I want to use my video inside this normal map layer field. So let's do a Alt drag and drop. Alright, now we see that something else is happening here. That feels a little bit better, but not quite, because what I want to do is my movement here to have an effect on how my particle will be disturbed and how my particle will behave into this 3D space. So what I will need to do is to use some kind of map, which is which will say accordingly to my movement to set particle in one direction or the other. So let's have a peek on what this texture should look like. So here is a normal map texture. So it uses this kind of set of colors to say in which direction I will send my particles. So let's say green will be on the top, magenta on the bottom, something like that. Maybe it's not true, maybe green will be on the left and magenta on the right, but you get the idea. And to do that, right now it's this same video that I use as a source of my field. I will add a right click, utility, optical flow, and by default the number iteration of the optical flow is on 1. I will put that into 10. And now as you see, to explain better, let's use this video that I lived on my composition and go back into the mode. So this source video here, I will add a renderer, Ctrl+Shift+A, Ctrl+Shift+A, and place the other one here, and deactivate my 3D plane, and use this same optical flow. Alright, and 10 iteration. And as you see, if I create a movement, when I create a movement on the top on a vertical direction, it will change my colors, and on the left and right also a different set of color. And I will use these colors to say to my particle, using my normal map layer field, in which direction I will send them. So let's deactivate this source video and go back into our normal map layer field. And now I will use this to say in which direction I will send my particles. Let's go back in 3D space and reactivate the video surface renderer. And now let's see if that works. Not so much, because I will augment the force strength by a small amount. And now we see that it's already better. Alright. And now I show you everything I could to explain how we could recreate this kind of effect. Last thing I can do in this video surface renderer is put my auto illumination to 100%, and then I shall see better what's happening. And now I just use a combination of techniques, which is actually to do a small resume, create a plane, create a surface renderer, which contain my source video as a texture, which is this one. As a reminder, everything comes from my source video, which is a shared element. Then, after creating this video on this plane, let's go back into mix view. This is actually my plane, which is viewed by this camera, right? So if I move my plane, here's what's happening in my 2D view. Then after that, I create some particles. So here is just in 3D view. Right now I just create a point renderer, which is this one, and after creating this point renderer, I emit particle from it. And this particle I put a mask, which is this one. And this mask actually says that my particle will only be emitted from the contrast, the outbounds of my image using this Sobel modifier, and that's what is emitting this particle only from this zone here. Then on my particle I use because right now I'm just emitting this particle, then I use a normal map layer field, and inside this normal map layer field I use again this same texture, this same video input that I use everywhere, and then I put optical flow to allow my particle to be sent in one direction or the other. And finally, before my emit particle, I use a colorize layer, using again this same source video layer, this one, to colorize my particle. And now it's just a matter of fine tuning and of, well, doing what you want to do to create your particles. For instance, if I want to emit my particle from my wall plane, let's deactivate the mask. Alright. If I want my particle not to be disturbed by the optical flow, let's deactivate the optical flow, and so on. And just to finish on this video, I should say two things. First, the source video. If you want to see where it's used, I can do a right click, and then I can see that it's used one time here. So let's deactivate this one. One time in a material, in a component. You can see here on this icon. It's used one time as a Colorize layer, so which I use to colorize my particle. It's used one time in the source video here as a mask of my particle to say where I shall emit them or not, and was last time in a normal map layer field. So that's how you emit particle from an image. I hope everything is clear. Even if it's not, you feel free to ask a question on the comments below this video. And if you want to see how it's done, you can go into the particle and open this vector field composition, and you have basically the same things done. And you can activate in video input here, and it will do the same thing. So it's done. Have a good night.